Hi, boys and girls. I'm continuing with my review of the sessions we had so far. The last video, I got as far as the exile when the Romans conquered Jerusalem and basically kicked out the Jews from Israel, sold them as slaves to northern Africa, Egypt, Persia, and Europe. So Jews came as slaves to Rome, and the Romans wanted the Jews should forget their relationships to the land of Israel, and they gave Eretz Israel a new name. It was called Palestine. In Hebrew, Palestina, Al Shem HaPlishtim, to remember the Philistines that used to live there. And even Jerusalem has its name changed from Jerusalem, Yerushalayim, to Ilia Capitolina. Um, Jews kind of continued to live in the Roman Empire, but at a certain point, Rome was a country that worshipped idols, and they changed their religion to a new religion, which was called Christianity, Nazarut. And that became the official religion of the Roman Empire. And the situation of the Jews began to get worse and worse, lihiot yoter ra. Even though the Jews were spread out all over Europe by now, really, after the Romans taught the hatred of the Jews, and that the Jews were responsible for the death of Jesus, where he was crucified, um, everybody was raised to hate the Jews. And therefore, the Jewish situation in Europe was very difficult, and Jews were kicked out of almost every single country in Europe. And there was one country, Poland, and their king Kazimir of Poland invited the Jews because he thought that they would be good for the economy, that they are good business people. So Jews arrived in Poland and in Russia, and between the two, there were 5 million Jews. But those Jews were really not allowed to live wherever they wanted. And there was a place called the Pale of Settlements. The Pale of Settlements. And if I could get this to work for me, here we go. So from the Black Sea to the sea in the north here, this was the strip of land where Jews were able to live. It was called the Pale of Settlements, and there were 5 million Jews living here. And in Hebrew, it's called Tchum HaMoshav. This side of the Pale is called Eastern Russia or Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe is more correct. And in Hebrew, Mizrach Europa. And there was a certain type of anti-Semitism here. We will talk about that in a minute. Then there was this side of the Pale of Settlement, which we call Western Europe. Now here, Jews were already freed. They were emancipated. And Jews, by emancipation, we mean that everybody had equal rights. It was very difficult for Christians who lived there and hated the Jews and discriminated against them now to have a law that says the Jews are equal to them. Jewish children went to school. They didn't study the local language, but they studied Hebrew and Yiddish, and they studied Bible, so they knew how to read and write, and they were doing very well in school. So Christians became very jealous of them. And slowly Jews were kicked out of every single country here, as I said before. On this side, Jews weren't allowed to own land. And at one point, the when they were living here, there was one Russian ruler. They were called czars, and the Russian ruler, Nicholas II, he was kind of nicer, not good, but nicer to the Jews. And a rumor got out not that Jews killed him. He was killed, but it wasn't by Jews. As a result, over here, there were massive pogroms for about 23 years. Pogroms against the Jews. So in both sides, east and west of the Pale of Settlements, Jews were suffering. Here pogroms, here jealousy. Many of the Jews from here left. Most of them went to North America, the US and Canada. Some of them went to Eretz Israel, and those became the first pioneers, and we called them the first Aliyah. Now, if I could get here, you could see the area between the Baltic Sea and the Black Sea, this whole strip of land. This is where the Jews lived. I'm going to go down a little further and see what happens to the Jews who are living in those areas. So we will continue with that next lesson. Thank you for listening.